Okay, I'm not sure now if I'm continuing where I left off or I'm starting at the beginning, but these are our PowerPoint slides on writing a literature review, which you have to do for our Wednesday, May 23rd class. Bring in a draft of your literature review, and you may want to have your textbook next to you as we go through these slides as well. These slides are found under the Documents and Resources folder in week 3 in Blackboard. Okay, if you want to refer to patent section B, topic 8, I'm going to turn to that myself for this part. So, by doing the annotated bibliography assignment, you already know 5 key things for each article. I won't go through them. You know what they are. You've written them in your annotated bibliography. And one of the reasons I had you do that is because those 5 things for each article that you annotated will be really important for your literature review. You're going to take those 5 things, and in the literature review, you are going to be evaluating the scholarly strengths and weaknesses of each of these 5 aspects of each peer-reviewed journal article. And your literature review can include, in fact, I encourage you to include more than just the 4 peer-reviewed research articles that you used in the annotated bibliography. That was just a start. You can just stick to those 4 if you want for the literature review. You won't be penalized for that. But to have a full, rich literature review and to give you enough to write about, I would urge you to look up a few more articles, peer-reviewed research articles, on your topic to write about. Okay. The next slide is based on Patent B, Topic 9, and Patent D, Topic 21. So, when you're starting to think about your literature review, start thinking about the 4 most recent articles by date you used in your annotated bibliography as a body of literature on the topic. Think of all of them being like a field of scholarship on your topic. That here is all the literature or all of the most recent literature about my particular research topic. So take the big picture forest versus the trees overview of your 4 peer-reviewed research articles and any other peer-reviewed research articles that you may have already looked up and that you want to include in your literature review. Take a step back and think of an overview of all of them. Think also about the previous literature or studies that your 4 articles cite. So, of course, your 4 peer-reviewed research articles have their own literature reviews. They cite other sources. Maybe they cite a few sources over and over again and discuss those sources. So think about that as being part of your overview, part of the entire body of literature on the topic. Think about what that previous literature, according to your 4 peer-reviewed research articles, what that previous literature says about your topic as well. You're thinking of an entire body of scholarship here and what it said about your topic over time. Now, considering that entire body of scholarship, think about the trends and patterns you are seeing in the study of this topic. Maybe there are certain findings that come up over and over again. More importantly, maybe there are certain methods that are being used to study this topic over and over again. Maybe certain keywords or concepts. And now what you're going to do in the literature review is you are going to evaluate the strengths, weaknesses, and gaps in these overall trends and patterns from the body of scholarship on your research topic. So you're taking the large view, the overview in your literature review and evaluating it. So to put this in terms of the text, if you look at Patent B, Topic 9, Examples 1 and 2. Example 1 is a great way to point out an important gap in a body of literature. So to point out a weakness or a gap in the trends and patterns that you're seeing. It starts out, because most of the published literature on prevention of youth substance use, and abuse has been conducted with majority populations, that is, white youth from the middle class, the question has been raised about whether interventions found to be effective with the majority group can be successful in preventing substance use and abuse among minority youth. With regard to that question, the limited amount of relevant empirical research has yielded mixed findings, and so on and so on. So there you go. They're talking about what previous research has done, so noting the strength or what it has done, as a way to introduce the gap in that previous research, the gap in the body of scholarship. Example 2 is focusing on the strengths and what has been done with a research topic. So let's look at that. A vast literature now exists linking social support to well-being. Epidemiological studies show that people who have more supportive ties are less likely to become ill and more likely to live longer. More recently, researchers who are interested in the effects that social relationships have on health have turned their attention to the negative side of social interactions. That is, or for example, the effects of negative social interactions. And so, by noting a new trend, you are perhaps going on to say, hey, here's a new trend that should be studied more, and I'm going to do just that. Who knows where this example went after that introduction, but it's a great way to introduce what you want to do with your research in terms of what's already been done in the past. So introduce what's been done in the past in the overall body of scholarship on your topic as a way to then introduce specifically what you want to do. Okay. I know it's a lot to take in at once. You've probably never written a literature review before. They're kind of confusing at first. But we will look at examples as well, sample literature reviews on Blackboard in our course Blackboard site, and that should help. Okay, so this is based on Part D, topics 9, or Part D, Topic 19, Part E, Topic 25. So, again, thinking overall of your body of scholarship on your topic and the trends and patterns, what you can do to organize what you're seeing about these trends and patterns in order to evaluate the trends and patterns is, on your computer in Word, you could devote one document most likely, maybe not one file unless you're working on a huge research project, but in this case for your research proposals, I'd say one document to each theme, trend, or pattern that you've noticed. And then in each of those documents, note down the articles that relate to that theme, trend, or pattern and how they relate to that theme. So you're doing sort of a blown up outline here. Instead of outlining your themes and trends and patterns all on one sheet, you're devoting one sheet of paper, one document to each theme, trend, or pattern that you're seeing in previous literature, and then you're noting down the specifics of what each article says about that theme, trend, or pattern. Okay? And that forms the basis of your literature review, because you're going to set up your literature review by the themes, trends, and patterns. So look at the literature reviews and the research articles that you've gathered for your annotated bibliography and your literature review. Look at how those literature reviews are set up. Not all literature reviews are set up by themes and trends and patterns, but a lot of them are, and I think that makes for a strong literature review, so that's what I'm asking you to do here for yours. So probably your best examples of literature reviews are the ones in your peer-reviewed research articles. So look at those and how they're set up, particularly set up by themes, trends, and patterns. There are also examples in Part E, Topic 25. Let's look at that for a minute. Here you have an example of a topic outline for setting up a literature review. I'll let you look at that on your own. It looks pretty standard for an outline, but notice how it is set up by specific factors that deal with the research question. Factors, trends, patterns, themes, however you want to look at it, they're all referring to the same thing in this case. Okay, now how do you evaluate the article's discussions of these themes, patterns, and trends? This is where you have to bring critical thinking to bear. You need to assess, in your own words, how well each article discusses each of the trends, patterns, or themes you are noticing. You started doing this in your annotated bibliographies. From the annotated bibliographies I've read so far on the Week 2 discussion board, you're doing a good job of this. You just need to be more specific in critiquing how each article discusses the trend, pattern, or theme. And you are analyzing each trend, pattern, or theme in terms of its scholarly significance or worth for your particular research question. You are analyzing, assessing each article's discussion of each trend, pattern, or theme in terms of its worth for your particular research question. Is what the article doing helpful? Or is it pointing out gaps or weaknesses that you're going to pick up on? Do you like the methods they used for discussing this trend, theme, or pattern, or not, and why? And will you use the same methods or not? Why? And then you will state briefly, of course in the literature review, what trends, patterns, or themes your proposed research will follow or will also discuss, and what it will challenge or do differently. We'll talk more about this in the next slide. So let's look at examples in Part E, Topic 26. Particularly examples 2 and 3. In example 2, you see two different ways to point out specific weaknesses in your articles. In example 2, it says, in a series of pilot studies, X was found to precede Y in most cases. Always there's a pattern. And that's a good way to introduce a pattern that perhaps you are going to break in your research. Also in example 2, based on interviews with just 5 teenage boys, Jones, 2003, found that A is stronger than B. Look, by just the use of that word just 5 teenage boys, it indicates that you think that that's too small a sample and that a conclusion should not be based on that small a sample, and that hopefully you will go on to write that your research is going to do better. You're going to do better. Let's look at example 3 there on page 61, Patent Part E, Topic 26. Example 3, almost all the available data on this topic were collected using mailed surveys with low response rates. Hence, little is known about the views of non-respondents. Definitely talking about weaknesses there, weaknesses in the study. Using only mailed surveys, low response rates, never good. So little is known about this topic or the views of non-respondents. So hopefully then you're going to go on to say, I'm going to do things differently. Take more of a look at page 61, Part E, Topic 26. You may want to bookmark it in your text because that is really the heart of your literature review, or the most important part, is being selective and critical in writing about other people's studies. And that's what you want to do in your own literature review. So take a look at that page, page 61. Okay, more on evaluation in the literature review. You will want to add your own commentary Taking the broad view again here, discussing which studies are most like your own and why. That's a broad view. That might be at the beginning or end of your literature review, not in your discussion of specific articles. And then which studies are different from your own and why. Okay. And critique the weaknesses of the studies, what we just discussed, how to do that. And also point out the gaps in the literature, which we talked about. This is from the book on page 61. Are there unstudied groups and variables? There's your entryway to introduce your research, your proposed research, and how it might take up these unstudied groups or variables. Have researchers tackled your problem from only one theoretical perspective and not others? Well, then that could signal a problem that you are going to try to help resolve or solve by looking at other theoretical perspectives in your proposed research. Or is there only one or two or three methods that previous researchers have used, only a few methods, and they haven't considered other methods they could use, but your proposed research is going to do so. So always coming back to how will your proposed research fill the gaps? That is what you're always coming back to in your literature review. So see examples 2 and 3, topic 26, page 61, what we just looked at. So again, bookmark that page, study it, and base your literature review on that. Okay. Do's and don'ts from Patton E, topics 23 and 26. Here I quoted Patton because I think this is an important quote from page 55. And I am frozen here. What happened? Okay, I'm going to wrap up this video lecture here since it's close to 20 minutes and I don't know if I'll be able to upload it all to YouTube without editing it down first. So we will pick up here where I left off on this slide, the do's and don'ts, in a separate video lecture. Okay, see you soon.